Ancient builders moved stones heavier than trucks with a precision that rivals our lasers. This is the mystery of the megalith builders, a puzzle rooted in a forgotten mathematics of impossible accuracy. By the end of this journey, you will understand how these stone secrets challenge our entire view of history. How did cultures across the globe achieve such flawless construction without modern tools? And what profound knowledge was lost with them? What does it truly mean to say a civilization was advanced? That sense of scale you feel at Stonehenge is just the beginning. These megalithic structures are more than just piles of rock. They are monumental puzzles left by prehistoric peoples who worked with a breathtaking ambition. They built with massive, interlocking stone blocks, often fitted together so perfectly that not even a blade of grass can slip between them. And all of this was accomplished without a single drop of mortar to hold them in place. They left us no written manuals, no blueprints, only the silent, imposing stones themselves. This silence is what fuels our intense speculation. Were these places temples for forgotten ceremonies, or perhaps sophisticated astronomical observatories tracking the sun and stars with uncanny accuracy? Archaeologists like Colin Renfrew point to their roles as territorial markers and community centers, places that anchored a culture's identity to the land. Look closer and you see their signature styles, the cyclopean masonry of giant, irregular blocks, and the polygonal walls where many-sided stones lock into a seamless, jigsaw puzzle whole. Their alignments are not random. They capture the solstice sun or frame the equinox moon with a precision that feels anything but primitive. And this phenomenon is not isolated. From the haunting dolmens scattered across Europe to the stoic moai giants of Easter Island, we see a recurring theme of impossible engineering. How could cultures separated by vast oceans and millennia conceive of such strikingly similar monuments? The answer, it seems, is written in a lost language of mathematics and a profound understanding of the physical world that we are only just beginning to decipher. This global network of stone begins to feel less like coincidence and more like a whisper from a shared past. From the wind-swept Orkney Islands to the dizzying heights of the Peruvian Andes, these monuments form a chain of enigmas encircling the planet. The megalithic phenomenon is not a single culture's achievement but a puzzle scattered across continents, as if a fundamental piece of human knowledge was either independently discovered by isolated peoples or passed along some forgotten ancient highway. Consider Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, a site so old it predates Stonehenge by thousands of years, its T-shaped pillars standing as a silent rebuke to our ideas of linear progress. Then there is the submerged Yonaguni monument off the coast of Japan, a massive, terraced structure that some researchers believe could be a man-made complex now resting beneath the waves. Despite the vast oceans and millennia separating these builders, the echoes are uncanny. You see similar design principles, a recurring fascination with astronomical alignments, and a common drive to build something permanent and profound. The sheer number of these sites, often erected in the most remote and challenging environments imaginable, points to more than just local tradition. It speaks to a coordinated, sophisticated societal effort, a monumental undertaking that required deep resources and unwavering purpose. So what common thread could possibly link these ancient cultures across such immense stretches of time and space? The connection may not be found in traded goods or migrating tribes, but in something far more universal, a language understood by all, the silent, precise language of mathematics. The silent language of mathematics finds its most thunderous expression in the raw physics of moving mountains. Think of the shear will required to quarry a stone block heavier than a fully loaded jumbo jet, and then transport it for miles across rivers, forests, and hills. This was not a matter of simple brute force, but a sophisticated logistical ballet performed without wheels, pulleys, or draft animals. The challenge began at the quarry, where workers had to carefully separate a single megalith from the living bedrock. At places like Baalbek in Lebanon, they succeeded on a scale that is difficult to comprehend even today, extracting a monolith estimated to weigh 1,650 tons. This single, unfinished block still lies in its quarry, a permanent testament to ambition that borders on the superhuman. How did they move such incredible weights? The prevailing theories are a tribute to human ingenuity. We imagine teams of workers using log rollers or hauling stones on greased wooden sledges across specially prepared causeways. Experimental archaeologists have demonstrated that with enough coordinated labor and clever rope work, these methods can work. Yet, when we scale these experiments up to the actual sizes involved, the numbers become staggering. Transporting the Baalbek stone would have required the coordinated effort of thousands of individuals for months, all moving in perfect harmony to prevent catastrophe. This level of organization implies a society with remarkable social structure and a shared, unwavering purpose. The selection of materials adds another layer of mystery. Why did the builders of Stonehenge go to the extraordinary effort of hauling bluestones all the way from Wales, a journey of over 150 miles? Was it purely for the stone's durability, or did these specific rocks hold a deeper, perhaps ceremonial significance that compelled such a monumental journey? This incredible investment in logistics, moving the very bones of the earth, was only the prelude. The true magic and the deeper mystery began when these colossal stones arrived at the building site, ready to be shaped with a precision that defies belief. Running your fingers along the stone joints at Sacsayhuamán is a humbling experience. The walls feel less like a construction and more like a single, continuous surface forged from the earth itself. This is the art of polygonal masonry, a technique that transforms ordinary stone into an interlocking masterpiece. Each block is an irregular polygon, a shape with many sides and angles, carved to fit its neighbors with breathtaking intimacy. The result is a seamless wall where the gaps are so minuscule, so perfectly eliminated, that not even the thinnest paper can find a purchase. This achievement goes far beyond simple aesthetics. By distributing force evenly across countless contact points, these interlocking walls become incredibly resilient, able to withstand the violent tremors that frequently shake the Peruvian Andes. The stability is born entirely from the precision of the fit, a perfect marriage of form and function achieved without a single drop of binding mortar. How does one even begin to craft such a puzzle? The process defies simple explanation. It was not a matter of carving one block and then shaping the next to fit. This was a holistic endeavor, requiring the builders to envision the final wall in its entirety before a single stone was cut. Each block, weighing many tons, had to be uniquely sculpted with multiple complex faces, each face perfectly angled to match not one but several surrounding stones. Engineers suggest they may have used soft clay or plaster to create detailed molds from a master template, transferring that perfect negative shape onto the hard granite. Others propose a system of iterative fitting where a block was placed, its contact points marked with pigment, then painstakingly adjusted again and again until the union was flawless. This was a three-dimensional jigsaw puzzle executed on a colossal scale, where a single error in angle or measurement could render an entire block useless. The sheer patience and foresight required is staggering. This level of precision points to something deeper than skilled craftsmanship. it hints at a foundational understanding of geometry and spatial mathematics that we are only now beginning to appreciate. The puzzle of the polygonal walls is ultimately a mathematical one. How do you calculate the complex, multifaceted angles for a single stone, ensuring it locks perfectly with 5 or 6 different neighbors, using only the most rudimentary of tools? This is the heart of what we call impossible precision, a standard of accuracy in these ancient structures that, according to our conventional timeline, simply should not exist. We see it in the joints so tight they reject even a sliver of light, in the way a corridor points unerringly to a star that only appears once every 26,000 years, and in the silent repetition of the same geometric proportions from one continent to another. This is not the result of good guesswork or practiced estimation. It implies a foundational grasp of advanced principles, a working knowledge of geometry and trigonometry that some researchers argue borders on an early form of calculus. The mathematician John Michell spent a lifetime studying the sacred geometry woven into the landscape of Britain, finding the same irrational numbers, pi and the golden ratio, encoded again and again in the dimensions of stone circles and earthworks. This mathematical foundation was not merely for show. That perfect fit in a polygonal wall does more than look impressive. It creates a structure that can flex and shift during an earthquake, redistributing immense forces without collapsing. The precision is fundamentally functional, a primary reason why these sites have endured for millennia while modern buildings crumble after a century. So where did this knowledge come from? The level of understanding required to execute such feats suggests a mathematical tradition that was either painstakingly accumulated and refined over countless generations, a slow burn of intellectual progress lost to time, or it points to a source, a wellspring of advanced knowledge that was available to these builders and then, for reasons we can only guess, vanished from the common record. That same mathematical mind that shaped stone also turned its gaze upward, mapping the heavens with the same impossible precision. Stand inside the ancient mound of Newgrange in Ireland on the morning of the winter solstice. For a few precious minutes, as the sun crests the horizon, a single, narrow beam of light travels down a long passageway to flood the deepest inner chamber with a golden glow. This event happens just once a year, a perfect alignment of architecture and astronomy orchestrated over 5,000 years ago. This was not an isolated discovery. Around the world, the megalith builders were celestial engineers, synchronizing their stone circles, temples, and tombs with the clockwork of the cosmos. Stonehenge's famous heel stone frames the rising solstice sun. The Mnajdra temple in Malta channels the equinox sunrise through its main doorway. In the Egyptian desert, the oldest known astronomical alignment, the Nabta Playa circle, uses arranged stones to track the movements of specific stars. To achieve this, the builders needed more than just a single clever observation. They required a deep, sustained study of the sky. They had to note the sun's slow migration along the horizon throughout the year, pinpointing its northernmost and southernmost points to mark the solstices. They had to track the moon's more complex 18.6-year cycle, and even understand the far slower wobble of Earth's axis, a phenomenon known as the precession of the equinoxes, which shifts our view of the stars over a cycle of 26,000 years. Capturing these long-term cycles in stone implies a scientific tradition, a methodical recording of data passed down through generations. This was not a casual hobby. It suggests a dedicated class of individuals, early astronomer priests who spent their lives watching, measuring, and calculating. They were the living computers of their age, developing a mathematical language to translate the grand, cyclical movements of the heavens into fixed, terrestrial measurements on the ground. The monuments they left behind are more than calendars. They are permanent proof of a profound relationship with the universe, a relationship built not on myth but on mathematics. The granite walls of Pumapunku present a paradox that chills the spine of any modern engineer. Here we find andesite and granite blocks, some of the most durable stones on the planet, cut with a level of precision that would be challenging even with computer-controlled machinery. The surfaces are flawlessly smooth, the edges are razor-sharp, and the geometric cutouts are so perfectly identical they seem to have been stamped out by a single, massive press. Now picture the tools we traditionally give these ancient builders: stone hammers, antler picks, and soft copper chisels. Experimental archaeology confirms what common sense suggests. These tools are perfectly adequate for working softer stones like limestone or sandstone. But when applied to granite, the result is a slow, grueling process of pulverization, not precision. A copper chisel would dull almost instantly against granite's crystalline structure, making it impossible to achieve the clean, intricate channels and perfect right angles we see. So how were these stone canvases rendered with such impossible artistry? The gap between the accepted tools and the achieved results is a chasm that demands an explanation. Some researchers point to the potential use of harder, more advanced materials that have not survived in the archaeological record. Could they have employed diamond-tipped drills, a technology we consider modern, to bore into this incredibly hard rock? The presence of intricate, millimeter-perfect drill holes in Egyptian granite statues lends some credence to this idea. Others suggest methods that bypass the need for a harder tool altogether, such as using sound waves in a process called sonic machining to vibrate the stone apart at a molecular level. There are even theories about thermal shock, where fires were lit on the rock surface and then rapidly cooled with water, creating controlled fracture lines. Yet, even these imaginative solutions struggle to account for the sheer perfection and repeatability of the cuts. This tool conundrum is more than a technical puzzle. It forces a profound rethink of what we mean by primitive. It suggests that the mathematical knowledge we have been tracing was not just theoretical, it was intensely practical. It may have been applied to create specialized tools and sophisticated processes that have left no physical trace, a hidden technology of the mind that turned stone into something as malleable as clay. The stones of Pumapunku do not simply challenge our history, they seem to defy the very laws of physics as we understand them. Here in the high plains of Bolivia, you find granite and andesite blocks carved with a geometric perfection so absolute it feels alien. These are not the weathered, organic shapes of typical ancient ruins. These stones are sharp, their edges crisp, their surfaces unnaturally flat. They feature intricate H-shaped slots, precise T-shaped grooves, and channels that run in perfectly straight lines, all cut into a stone so hard it would quickly destroy the copper and stone tools we traditionally associate with such builders. The uniformity is the most baffling part. Each repeating shape is a perfect clone of the next, as if they were all stamped out by the same massive industrial press. This is not handcraft in the way we imagine it. This is the work of a system that valued absolute consistency, a process built on precision instruments, rigid templates, and jigs that ensured every cut was identical. The geometric patterns are a language of pure mathematics, a visual representation of strict, repeatable rules applied without error. Yet this masterpiece of engineering lies in a state of utter devastation. The site is a field of scattered megaliths, some tossed like toy blocks, as if struck by an unimaginable force. This catastrophic destruction adds a profound layer of mystery. It is not just a building that fell into ruin over time. It is a place where knowledge itself appears to have been shattered and scattered. The very tools, the templates, the methods, all seem to have been erased in a single, violent event. Pumapunku, therefore, is more than an archaeological site. It is a ghost in the machine of human progress, a silent question mark placed directly in our timeline, asking us what we have truly forgotten about the capabilities of the ancient world. This geometric code, etched into the earth across continents, required a common language, a shared ruler against which the cosmos could be measured. What if the builders of Stonehenge and the architects of the Great Pyramids were using the same tape measure? The meticulous surveys of engineer Alexander Thom revealed a startling pattern. After studying hundreds of stone circles across Britain and France, he proposed the existence of a standardized unit, a megalithic yard of roughly 2.72 feet. This was not a rough estimate. The perimeters and diameters of these circles were laid out in whole multiples of this unit with a precision that defies chance. The implication is staggering. A standardized measurement implies a standardized knowledge, a system of mathematics and geometry that was taught, preserved, and shared across vast distances. This was not a collection of isolated villages building by instinct. It was the work of a coordinated tradition, a guild of cosmic engineers speaking the same technical language. This language was geometry in its purest, most applied form. Long before the Greek philosopher Pythagoras was born, these builders were using the very triangle that bears his name. They understood that a triangle with sides in a ratio of 3, 4, and 5 would always produce a perfect right angle, a fundamental tool for squaring up the massive foundations of their monuments. But their knowledge went far beyond simple triangles. They worked with complex ellipses and intricate flattened circles, layouts that require a sophisticated understanding of pi and irrational numbers. This geometric code was the ultimate practical tool. It allowed a master builder to convey an entire complex design using nothing more than a set of proportions and a fixed unit of measure. A team at a distant site could then recreate the structure perfectly, using ropes, pegs, and this universal geometric language to translate the blueprint directly onto the landscape. The persistence of these forms, from the rolling hills of Britain to the deserts of Egypt, suggests this was more than just a building technique. It was a formalized science, a sacred geometry that connected the earthly realm to the celestial order, a taught tradition that turned abstract mathematics into eternal stone. The stones themselves seem to hold a memory of sound. Deep within the hypogeum of Hal Saflieni, an underground labyrinth carved from solid limestone in Malta, certain chambers resonate with a powerful, low hum when you speak. This is not a random echo. It is a specific frequency, a musical note that fills the space and vibrates through your very bones. This phenomenon is not unique. Across the ancient world, from the passage tombs of Ireland to the temples of Peru, megalithic sites possess remarkable acoustic properties. Some chambers amplify whispers so they can be heard clearly across a large room. Others create strange, repeating echoes that seem to dance around the listener, or produce resonant frequencies that can subtly alter brainwave patterns. Researchers in the field of archaeoacoustics like Paul Devereux propose that this was no accident. Sound was not just a byproduct of these spaces, it was a fundamental component of their design. The mathematical relationship between a room's dimensions and its resonant frequency is a cornerstone of modern acoustical engineering. If you know the speed of sound and the dimensions of a space, you can calculate the specific frequency at which that space will naturally ring. The evidence suggests the ancient builders possessed this very knowledge. They were sculpting with sonic mathematics, carving chambers and corridors to harness specific sound waves. This was a technology of vibration, where the geometry of the stone was calculated to manipulate an invisible force. Imagine a ceremonial space where a chant or a drumbeat was not just heard, but physically felt by everyone present. unifying the group through a shared sensory experience. This sonic environment could have been used to deepen ritual practices, perhaps even to induce states of heightened awareness or tranquility for healing purposes. The creation of such spaces reveals a science that was profoundly holistic. For these builders, architecture was not separate from mathematics, and mathematics was not separate from human experience. They were weaving them all together, crafting stone into a tool that could shape not just the physical world, but the mind itself. The silent language of mathematics may have been spoken far earlier than we ever dared to believe. Look closely at the Sphinx of Giza, at the deep, undulating channels carved into its limestone body. These are not the scars of wind and sand, which wear away stone in a soft, horizontal fashion. These are the classic marks of water, of torrential rainfall falling over thousands of years, cascading down the ancient statue's sides. Geologist Robert Scott's analysis points to a profound conclusion that the Sphinx must have stood during a time when the Sahara was a green savanna, a period that ended over 7,000 years ago. This water erosion hypothesis shatters the conventional timeline, suggesting this guardian of the plateau is not 4,500 years old, but perhaps twice that age. If this is true, then the entire foundation of our historical narrative shifts. The Sphinx would not have been built by the Old Kingdom Egyptians as we know them, but by a civilization lost to the deep past, a culture that possessed the engineering prowess to carve a colossus from the living rock. This is not an isolated anomaly. Similar patterns of heavy water erosion appear on megalithic foundations at sites like Tiwanaku in Bolivia and on the Osirian in Egypt, structures that also seem wildly out of place in their accepted timelines. What does this mean for our understanding of human progress? It forces a radical re-evaluation. Could complex mathematics and engineering have been discovered not once, but multiple times throughout human history? We are asked to consider a cyclical model of civilization where advanced knowledge is achieved, then lost in a cataclysm, only to be painstakingly rediscovered millennia later. The erosion patterns on these stones are more than just geological data. They are physical evidence of a forgotten epoch, a lost chapter in the human story where the builders of this mysterious age first unlocked the mathematical secrets we have been tracing all along. High in the Andes, the stone walls of Machu Picchu have withstood centuries of violent earthquakes that would level a modern city. The secret to their resilience is not found in rigid strength, but in a brilliant, flexible design. This is dancing architecture where the stones are engineered to move. Each block is meticulously cut and fitted to its neighbors without any mortar, creating a complex, interlocking puzzle. When the ground shakes, these stones do not fight the force, they absorb it. They sway and settle, rocking back into place once the tremor has passed. This is not mere luck or simple craftsmanship. It is a profound application of physics. The builders, whether through intuition or formal knowledge, understood dynamics and load distribution on a level that rivals modern seismic engineering. The intricate geometry of the joints acts like a shock absorber, dissipating the destructive energy of an earthquake by channeling it throughout the entire structure. This requires a deep comprehension of how forces travel through materials and how to redirect that energy safely. It is a silent testament to a forgotten science of stability, a mathematics of motion and force literally set in stone. This knowledge represents a pinnacle of practical application, where abstract principles of physics were translated into a living, breathing city that could endure the very wrath of the mountain it was built upon. These stones were more than just buildings, they were profound philosophical statements carved from the earth. When we look past the sheer scale and precision, we begin to see a symbolic language woven into the very numbers and proportions of these sites. The placement of each stone, the count of the pillars, the angles of the corridors, all appear to be a deliberate code, a physical representation of a cosmic worldview. Mathematics for these ancient builders was not merely a tool for construction, it was a sacred bridge connecting the human realm to the divine order of the heavens. They were not just moving mountains of rock, they were attempting to capture the rhythm of the universe itself in a permanent, tangible form. Consider the 56 Aubrey holes that once encircled Stonehenge. This is not a random number. Researchers have long noted its connection to the complex cycles of the moon, specifically the 56-year period needed to track certain lunar eclipses. This was a giant, functional calendar etched into the landscape, but it was also a symbol. It demonstrated a belief that the same mathematical rules governing the sky should be mirrored here on the ground. This principle repeats across the globe. In the Great Pyramid of Giza, the ratio of its perimeter to its height is a close approximation of 2 times pi, a fundamental constant that defines circles everywhere. The pyramid's dimensions can be read as a mathematical model of the Northern Hemisphere, scaling down the Earth's curvature into a perfect geometric shape. This was an act of profound symbolic meaning, an effort to create a microcosm of the world, a place where the earthly and the celestial could meet. The builders were philosopher-mathematicians, using the universal language of number and geometry to express their deepest understandings of existence. Their goal was harmony, to align their temples, their communities, and their lives with the perceived perfection of the cosmos. The megaliths, therefore, are not silent. They are constantly speaking to us in a language of sacred measure, telling a story of a time when the quest for knowledge and the search for meaning were one and the same. The ocean holds the greatest collection of megalithic ruins we can no longer see. Scattered across the sunlit shallows and the crushing dark of the abyss, these submerged structures are the silent, drowned chapters of our ancient past. Off the coast of Japan, the Yonaguni monument rises from the seafloor, a massive complex of terraces, steps, and sharp angular platforms carved from solid bedrock. Far to the west, in the Gulf of Combat, sonar has mapped the sprawling outlines of a city, with the remains of buildings and grids of streets, now known as Dwarka, lying deep under the water. These are not natural formations. The sheer geometry, the right angles, and the repetitive patterns all point to the work of human hands. Their existence forces a monumental shift in our perspective. We have been studying the megalithic world on the land we currently inhabit, but this is only a fraction of the story. These underwater sites reveal that megalithic building was a global and profoundly coastal phenomenon. The builders favored shorelines, constructing their grandest works at the edge of the known world, on continental shelves that were once dry, fertile land. When the last ice age ended, the glaciers melted, and the sea levels rose by over 400 feet, swallowing thousands upon thousands of square miles of coastline all around the world. This was not a slow, gentle process, but a rapid inundation that would have erased entire cultures from the map in a geological instant. The pinnacle of this lost civilization may not be in the deserts or on the hills we can visit today, but out there under the waves on plains we now call the ocean floor. Dating these sites is a tremendous challenge for archaeologists. Traditional methods like carbon dating are nearly impossible when you are dealing with carved stone, and the shifting sands of the seabed constantly obscure and rearrange the evidence. Yet the construction techniques we can observe offer a vital clue. The massive, interlocking blocks and the clean, precise cuts seen at Yonaguni are hauntingly familiar, mirroring the polygonal masonry of Sacsayhuamán and the flawless surfaces of Pumapunku. This points to a shared global tradition, a common architectural language spoken by cultures that were likely connected not by land but by sea. This evidence opens a floodgate of profound questions. Were these seafaring people the original megalith builders, a maritime civilization with advanced knowledge of astronomy, mathematics, and engineering that allowed them to navigate the globe and raise impossible structures? Their lost coastal cities would have been hubs of trade and ideas, centers of learning that disseminated this sacred geometry across the world. The silent stones beneath the water are not just ruins, they are a sunken library, and we have only just begun to read the first page. The same geometric principles that stabilized Andean walls echo in the smooth, sloping sides of the Great Pyramid. This is not a coincidence but a legacy, a thread of mathematical knowledge passed from an age of forgotten builders to the dawn of recorded history. The evidence lies in the systems of measure themselves. The ancient Egyptians used a unit called the sect to define the slope of a pyramid. This was not a simple angle but a precise ratio, a mathematical relationship between the vertical rise and the horizontal run. This concept of using a fixed proportion to govern form is exactly the same mindset we see in the megalithic yard and the complex geometry of stone circles. It is the language of sacred mathematics applied to a new kind of monument. Centuries later and a continent away, the architects of classical Greece would explore the idea of perfect proportion in the golden ratio, a number often found in nature and celebrated for its aesthetic harmony. While the direct link is debated, the underlying pursuit was identical to that of the megalith builders, a quest to capture a universal, mathematical beauty in stone. How did this knowledge travel across such vast stretches of time and space? The transmission may have been quiet and continuous, passed down through generations of master builders in an unbroken, albeit secretive, chain. Or it may have been a rediscovery where later cultures encountering the colossal ruins of their predecessors were inspired to reverse engineer the principles behind them. Imagine a Greek scholar standing before the Great Pyramid, or an Egyptian priest studying a much older, weathered menhir, and wondering about the mind that could conceive of such perfection. Our mathematical history is not a straight line of progress, but a relay race with crucial runners lost in the mist of time. The impeccable proportions of the Parthenon and the unwavering alignment of the Great Pyramid are not the beginning of the story. They are the magnificent flowering of a seed planted thousands of years earlier, a testament to an enduring human desire to find order in the universe and build in accordance with its hidden rules. The legacy of the megalith builders lives on, not in their names which are lost to us, but in the timeless principles of measure and harmony they first set in stone. From the stark dolmens of the Korean peninsula to the weathered stone tables of Menorca, the same forms emerge. A culture in ancient France raises a massive capstone atop upright stones, creating a solemn chamber, while thousands of miles away, a community in Korea executes an almost identical design. This is the seventh mystery, the strange uniformity of design that spans millennia and vast oceans. We see it in the trilithons, those iconic two uprights and one horizontal lintel at Stonehenge, mirrored perfectly in the taulas of Menorca, which are single, towering T-shaped stone formations. This architectural echo is not limited to one style. The principle of the post and lintel, the simplest and strongest way to create a doorway or support a roof, appears independently across the globe. So does the corbelled vault, where stones are layered inward until they meet at the top, a technique found in both the tombs of Ireland's Newgrange and the temples of the Maya. How can we explain such persistent repetition? One possibility is diffusion, the slow migration of ideas along ancient trade routes, carried by seafarers or wandering builders who shared a common blueprint for the sacred. Yet the vast separations in time and space make a single source incredibly difficult to pinpoint. The alternative is perhaps even more profound, that different cultures, facing the same fundamental challenges of engineering and symbolism, arrived at the same optimal solutions. They discovered universal truths of physics and form. A lintel placed across two posts is inherently stable, distributing weight downward through the vertical stones. A circular layout is naturally strong and perfectly suited for gathering a community, perhaps to observe the circular horizon. These forms represent a foundational logic, a kind of architectural grammar that arises when human ingenuity confronts the limitations and possibilities of stone. This cross-cultural consistency is one of the strongest arguments for a sophisticated, underlying mind at work. It was not a shared blueprint they followed, but a shared mathematics of reality itself, a universal understanding of load, balance, and symbolic geometry that different cultures each touched upon during their own unique journeys toward the eternal. The stones remain, but the minds that conceived them fell silent. This is the great mystery that follows the age of megaliths, a historical echo where the creators themselves seem to have vanished into the very air, leaving their colossal works as their only testimony. What could cause such a widespread and profound silence? Scholars propose a range of possibilities rooted in the immense challenges of the ancient world. A shift in climate could have transformed fertile lands into barren ground, forcing communities to abandon their sacred centers in a desperate search for sustenance. Perhaps they exhausted the local resources, the very timber and food supplies needed to sustain the enormous labor forces required for their ambitious projects. The strain of such monumental construction may have even triggered internal social collapse, a fracturing of the shared belief and purpose that once bound these societies together. Some researchers point to evidence of conflict or the arrival of new peoples with different traditions, events that could have disrupted the delicate cultural continuity needed to pass such specialized knowledge from one generation to the next. There are also more speculative ideas which contemplate a single catastrophic event, perhaps a rapid change in sea levels or a global climatic upheaval that fragmented a central, advanced culture. In this scenario, survivor colonies might have carried scattered fragments of the original knowledge to distant shores, explaining the similar but less sophisticated structures that appear in later periods. The true loss is not just the people, but the knowledge itself, the specific mathematics of impossible precision, the engineering principles for moving mountains, the understanding of celestial mechanics. All of it seems to fade from the common record. This created a vast historical gap, a dark age in human technical achievement where techniques that were once routine became the stuff of legend. The Great Pyramids of Egypt, for instance, represent not the beginning of this tradition, but a magnificent late echo of it, a final flowering of a knowledge system that was already ancient and perhaps incompletely understood. The void left by these builders is as profound as the stones they erected, a permanent question mark in our collective past that asks us what else we have forgotten. That impossible precision could be the product of a completely different kind of knowledge, one that did not cut stone but grew it. The Geopolymer hypothesis proposes a radical idea that many of these megaliths were not quarried in the traditional sense, but were cast in place, much like modern concrete. Materials scientist Joseph Davidovitz suggests the ancient builders possessed a sophisticated chemistry, a formula for creating an artificial stone from locally sourced, natural materials. They would have taken common limestone, ground it into a powder, and then mixed it with a special alkaline activator derived from plant ash. This created a chemical reaction, a geopolymerization, that transformed the slurry into a reconstituted stone that is chemically identical to the natural bedrock. This single idea elegantly solves multiple puzzles at once. The joints are impossibly tight not because of painstaking carving, but because the material was poured or packed into wooden formwork, molding itself to create a perfect, seamless fit. The transportation problem also vanishes, as moving barrels of liquid slurry and bags of powder is a far simpler task than hauling multi-ton blocks across miles of difficult terrain. The analysis seems to support this. Under a microscope, samples from some of the stones at the Giza Plateau show a microstructure that is more random and contains air bubbles, unlike the uniform, crystalline structure of natural limestone that formed over millions of years. If this is true, then the lost knowledge of the builders was not just mathematical but alchemical. It was a precise science of recipes and ratios, a chemistry of transformation that allowed them to create synthetic granite and limestone on demand. This was a different kind of mathematics altogether, the mathematics of material science, where the perfect proportion of ingredients yielded a stone that could be poured into any shape, defying the very logic of quarrying and carving that has defined our understanding of their work for centuries. This fragmented knowledge, scattered across geology and astronomy, is now being reassembled by a new kind of explorer. The lone archaeologist with a brush has been joined by a full scientific team, a convergence of disciplines all focused on a single, silent stone. They bring tools that see through the earth and measure with the patience of a laser. Ground-penetrating radar sends pulses deep into the soil, painting a picture of hidden passageways and chambers that have been sealed for millennia, revealing a site's true scale without ever turning a spade. Meanwhile, high above, three-dimensional laser scanners map every surface, every subtle curve and angle, with an accuracy down to a single micron. This creates a perfect digital twin, a record so precise it can detect the faintest tool marks, the specific quarry source of a stone, or the subtle wear patterns of thousands of years of weather. This data becomes a new language, a bridge to the past. Engineers feed these digital models into sophisticated software, simulating the immense forces needed to move a 200-ton block. They can test a theory about an earthen ramp or a complex lever system in a virtual world, watching for points of failure, calculating the exact number of workers and the precise angles of pull needed for success. Astrophysicists, armed with these exact dimensions, can calculate celestial alignments with an unprecedented certainty, determining not just if a corridor points to a star, but which specific star it captured on a specific night 5,000 years ago. This is more than just data collection. It is a form of reverse engineering on a grand scale. We are slowly, methodically, taking apart the megalithic puzzle with the very science we once believed separated us from its builders. The interdisciplinary approach does not seek to replace mystery with cold facts, but to understand the sophistication of the mind that created it. By applying the full force of modern physics, chemistry, and engineering, we are not diminishing their achievement. We are finally beginning to appreciate the profound depth of their mathematical and problem-solving genius. This collaborative effort, this meeting of ancient intellect and modern technology, is our best hope for finally hearing the story these stones have been trying to tell us all along. These stone calendars turn the horizon into a clock. At Chanquillo in Peru, 13 towers stand along a ridge, their jagged silhouette against the dawn creating a precise solar calendar. As the sun travels throughout the year, its rising point moves predictably from one tower to the next, marking specific dates with a clarity anyone could understand. This was a public timepiece, a communal tool for organizing planting and harvest. Yet other sites encoded far more complex rhythms. The 19-year metonic cycle, the time it takes for the sun and moon to realign in the same position in the sky, seems to be embedded in the structure of Stonehenge. This cycle reconciles the solar year with the lunar month, a crucial piece of knowledge for predicting eclipses and maintaining a calendar that stays in sync with both the sun and the moon. To track this, the builders needed more than a single alignment. They needed a mathematical model of celestial motion. The 56 Aubrey holes at Stonehenge, for instance, could have been used as a simple computer, with markers moved around the circle to model the 19-year lunar cycle and the even longer 18.6-year lunar nodal cycle, which tracks the moon's wobbling path. This was long-term predictive science. The ability to foresee an eclipse or announce the correct day for a crucial ceremony would have granted the keeper of this knowledge immense influence. These individuals were not just priests, they were the first astronomers and data scientists, using the fixed points of the stones to run calculations that connected the community to the cosmos. The megaliths were their hardware, a permanent, unchangeable reference system for understanding time itself. This transforms our view of these sites from passive temples into dynamic instruments, stone computers that process the movements of the heavens for the benefit of those on the ground. That profound sense of awe you feel standing within a stone circle is not an accident of history. It is the culmination of a design philosophy that wove human psychology directly into its mathematical fabric. Stepping into these spaces, you are immediately met with a shift in atmosphere, a palpable quiet that can feel either deeply peaceful or strangely unsettling. This universal human response is more than a coincidence. It is a field of study that bridges archaeology and neuroscience. The sheer, overwhelming scale of the stones makes the individual feel small, humbling you before the work of an ancient and powerful will. Yet this feeling of smallness is often paired with a counterintuitive sense of harmony, born from the perfect order and geometric precision that surrounds you. The clean lines, the repeating patterns, the flawless symmetry all speak to a mind that valued cosmic balance, and this order can have a profoundly calming effect on our own chaotic thoughts. Some researchers theorize that the specific geometries employed, certain ratios and proportions found repeatedly in nature, resonate with our brains on an innate subconscious level. These forms may trigger a deep-seated recognition, a sense of rightness that we are hardwired to perceive as beautiful or sacred. This suggests the builders were not just engineers and astronomers, they were intuitive psychologists. They understood that the form of a space would directly shape the experience of the person within it. They were crafting emotional and spiritual landscapes, using stone and mathematics as their tools to guide perception, to focus attention, and perhaps even to alter consciousness itself. This represents a holistic art, a lost science where number, physical form, and the inner workings of the human mind were seen as interconnected parts of a single, magnificent whole. The ground beneath our feet holds its own invisible currents. Beyond their precise alignment with the sun and stars, many megalithic sites seem to resonate with the Earth's own hidden energies. Some researchers propose that these builders practiced a form of geomancy, an ancient science of placement that sought out specific locations where terrestrial forces were most potent. These could be points where underground water flows created subtle electrical charges, or where geological fault lines generated unusual magnetic fields. The controversial idea of ley lines, those straight tracks said to connect ancient sites across the landscape, points to a possible belief in a planetary grid of energy, a web of power that the builders learned to perceive and mark. Modern investigators have sometimes recorded strange anomalies at these places, with compass needles wobbling erratically or devices picking up faint, unexplained electromagnetic pulses. If this was intentional, it suggests a knowledge that went far beyond astronomy. The builders may have understood that the Earth itself is a living, pulsing system, and that by placing their massive stones at certain nodes, they could interact with this system. This would represent a mathematics of the earth itself, a science of locating and building upon powerful, invisible intersections in the world's energy body. The purpose of such an alignment remains one of the great speculative mysteries. Were these sites designed to harness telluric energy for reasons we can no longer comprehend, perhaps for healing practices or to enhance the growth of crops? Or was the goal more spiritual, to create a space where the natural energy of the land could amplify ritual and deepen a connection to the world? This idea transforms a stone circle from a simple calendar into something far more dynamic, a kind of resonant chamber tuned not to sound, but to the silent, humming power of the planet. A team of modern stonemasons and engineers recently attempted to reconstruct a small section of polygonal wall using only stone hammers, copper chisels, and ropes. The project stretched for weeks. The first major hurdle was quarrying a block of even modest size, a grueling process of repeatedly pounding stone against stone to create a fragile fracture line. Then came the true test, shaping that rough block to fit its neighbors with the signature precision of the ancients. They used string lines and plumb bobs, marking the stone with pigment and painstakingly pecking away at the granite surface. The final joint was a testament to immense effort, yet a credit card could still slide easily between the stones. This gap, small to our eyes, represents a chasm of understanding. Experimental archaeology like this is incredibly valuable, proving that the basic physics of moving and raising large stones is within the realm of human possibility with enough coordinated labor. But these modern trials consistently fall short in two critical areas: efficiency and precision. We can achieve a rough version of the result, but we cannot replicate the speed or the flawless execution. The original builders worked with a confident, almost intuitive mastery, as if they possessed a mental blueprint and a physical skill set honed to a degree we can scarcely comprehend. These experiments force a humbling realization. Our modern, analytical minds approach the problem step by step, breaking it down into discrete tasks. The ancient masters may have perceived the entire process as a unified whole, their knowledge not just in their hands, but embedded in a cultural tradition that understood stone as a living partner in the work. Our struggles are a quiet tribute to their forgotten genius, a clear signal that the true tools they used were not just made of copper and stone, but of a profound and specialized knowledge that has since slipped through our fingers. Our most advanced tools now touch the very stones they were meant to preserve. The ethical dilemma we face is profound, a conflict between our thirst for knowledge and our duty to protect. Every laser scan, every core sample drilled from ancient granite, and every footstep from a curious visitor, however well-intentioned, leaves a mark. These sites are now caught between two forces: the slow, inevitable wear of nature and the accelerated impact of our own fascination. We risk loving these stone libraries to death, erasing the very mysteries we seek to solve through the sheer volume of our attention. The challenge of preservation is immense and multifaceted. Rising sea levels threaten coastal ruins, while more extreme weather patterns erode delicate stone carvings. The carbon dioxide from the breath of thousands of daily visitors can slowly acidify and degrade interior chamber walls. This creates a delicate balancing act for archaeologists and conservators. How do we study a site without altering it? How do we share its wonder without sealing it away from the world? The answers are not simple, and they require a new kind of approach, one that prioritizes minimal intervention and long-term stability over rapid discovery. This responsibility extends far beyond the physical. For many indigenous communities, these are not abandoned ruins but living sacred spaces, places of deep cultural and spiritual significance. Their ancestral connection to the land is woven into the very stones. The voices and traditional knowledge of these communities must be central to any conversation about a site's management, its study, and its future. The mystery of the megaliths is not merely a scientific puzzle to be solved. It is a shared cultural heritage, a legacy that belongs to all of humanity. Our approach must be guided by humility and respect, ensuring that these silent teachers remain intact for future generations to study, to wonder at, and to find their own inspiration in the enduring language of stone. These silent stone libraries hold a final, humbling lesson for our modern world. Our journey through the realm of the Lost Megalith Builders reveals a landscape where stone, sky, and number were not separate disciplines, but a seamless, unified whole. We have traced the outlines of their impossible precision, from the seamless joins that mock our tools to the celestial alignments that track cosmic cycles spanning thousands of years. We have seen their anti-seismic engineering that dances with the earth, and pondered the potential lost technologies, from geopolymer chemistry to sonic manipulation, that might explain their flawless execution. These structures are far more than ancient ruins. They are permanent questions carved into the planet, challenging the very core of our linear view of history and the assumed limits of ancient human capability. The mathematics they embodied was never merely about calculation. It was a living philosophy, a sacred bridge connecting human endeavor to the perceived order of the cosmos, and a breathtaking testament to an ingenuity that refuses to be confined by time. This exploration is not an end, but a starting point for your own curiosity. I encourage you to look deeper into the sites near you, to question the established narratives you have been taught, and to share your own thoughts on these enduring enigmas in the comments below. The stones have stood in silent witness for millennia, and they still have profound stories to tell, but only if we are willing to learn how to listen.